Hi, today I am here with Meredith Essalat, who is a school principal in San Francisco and author of the book, The Overly Honest Teacher, Parenting Advice from a Classroom. So first of all, I highly recommend you get the book. It's really a great book. It's really like when you want behind the scenes, you want to pull the screen away and you want to know what's really going on behind the scenes. Meredith has it for us. So it's a great book. And I guess I want to start with, why'd you write the book?
First off, I'm really happy to be here, Sue. Thank you so much for having me. I wrote the book back in 2014, or started it actually, when I had taken a brief hiatus from teaching full-time. My husband and I had relocated to Dallas. And I had finally kind of the space and the time to really reflect on lessons that landed well in my classroom, which ones did I want to continue to refine in my journey as a teacher, reminiscing on the mayhem and the hijinks of teaching in a middle school classroom, because that just happened on the regular. And then I really started thinking about the parent-teacher dynamic and how I wanted to see that improve. There seems to be so often this kind of growing chasm with regards to communication and us being able to recognize that we're all on the same team, we're working towards the same goal. And I really wanted to give parents strategies that could be applied in the at-home environment so that students had a cohesive learning environment from school to home and back again.
Okay, and you have the book behind you. So you want to grab it and show everybody?
Sure. Yes.
The Overly Honest Teacher.
Yes.
That's great. You don't always want that overly honest teacher in your daily life, but like in a book from a distance, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's a question that we are just really getting so much from parents, this idea of like loneliness for the kids right now during the pandemic. And our kids are suffering, and also we're suffering when we see that happening. And one of the questions that comes up is, if your kid's friend group, for a host of reasons, one might be that you have stricter rules about getting together, so they're all getting together with their friends without your kid. Like, there's so many reasons that aren't necessarily that you don't have a social child, but they need to reinvent themselves a little bit at a time where it feels impossible. Can you make new friendships during COVID?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm confident that we're actually going to become better at being strategic thinkers and problem solvers and all of those things because of our time in remote learning. But with regards to making new friends, for sure. We actually had new students join our school community this year in all grades, from primary up through middle school. And strategies were different with regards to how teachers worked with parents to embed students into the community feeling. I think it's something as simple as just setting up a routine lunch group where teachers serve as the facilitator, if you will. They set the Zoom up, they sit in the background, and students just get a chance to eat together and talk. And it's trying to simulate that sense of community that we would have in the cafeteria or on the recess yard or things of that nature. I think that teachers work really hard to form small groups in the classroom. And so if a parent sees that their child is struggling, to really work with the teacher on emphasizing more small group work, maybe setting up a study group where they can work together after school, have some binaural beats or some instrumental music playing in the background, hopefully nothing with lyrics because that's a distraction, and just give them time to be together. Friendships will form most of the time, especially for our middle schoolers, where we're not micromanaging, but rather just giving them the space to be and the space for them to find common ground and commonality.
So if the teacher isn't organically doing that and creating these small groups, because the teachers are burdened right now and they need to do a lot of things that just get things done. So how can a parent approach it if they're feeling like they don't know how to create an environment for their kid to make new friends? How do they approach the teacher? What's the most effective way you found?
Text, email, phone call, carrier pigeon, however you can get a hold of your child's teacher, because we're problem solvers. We got into this business of being educators because, idealistic as it may sound, like, we want to impact kids. We want to make them better humans. We want to make them better community members. And teachers have just a wealth of strategies and tools that they are wanting to share with parents. And so, we can say that there's a fine line, right, especially in remote learning, between the diminishment of the at-home environment and the learning environment. When are we truly on as teachers and when are we not? I have to say, knowing my colleagues, we're on 24/7. We want to be accessible to parents. So if you see your child is struggling, if you yourself are struggling with, I just don't know how to reach them, they're lonely, they're isolated, what do I do? Please reach out to us. I would say communication is our best weapon at this point.
And also, like in middle school and high school, you have more than one teacher. So you might not get every teacher being that kind of open-minded response, but in there is probably somebody who's willing to, right?
200%. I would guess to say you have a couple of allies in your corner who are ready to rally behind your child. If they're not doing so already on their own, let's make it that unification of both of your desires.
That's great. So you, as a teacher, did something with 25 positive things. And I just love that story. I think, first of all, it's great in the classroom for the kids, but certainly no reason not to do it at home as a parent. Tell us what that is.
So it was a strategy I came up with where, middle schoolers, they're snarky. They love nothing more than to throw a little jab. Most of the time in a sarcastic way, they don't always mean to throw the barbs that they do. But I still was not okay with it. We were going to be a culture and a community of support and advocacy and allyship for one another. So whenever I heard a student say something that was distasteful about themselves, I'm so dumb, I hate the way that I look, or about another classmate, you're so annoying, or whatever it might be, they had to write 25 positive adjectives. It was, in essence, a chance for me as a language arts teacher to build the vocabulary, to teach them the joys of using a thesaurus and finding synonyms. But it was also a way for them to be accountable to themselves and the words that they used, and to the classmate that they hurt. And they always had to, at the end of it, show it to me. They had to sign it, they had to date it, and then they had to give it to the person. And middle schoolers want to pass off, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. It always resonated when the student was the recipient of those positive words. And it really did change over time. I would find my students catching themselves like, probably more so because they didn't want to do the work and have to write the adjectives. But if that's what changed the course of their communication with their friends, it was well worth it. And it still works today. I still do it as a principal.
So are other teachers doing it in the classroom because of your as a principal, you're recommending that?
I have known several of my co-teachers over time to embed it in their classrooms as well. And it has worked the same.
I wonder how we can use that at home between siblings. Like, that can cause so much stress in households of one kid is a little snarkier toward the other. Do you think it can apply there?
200%. I think the most important thing is you have to be consistent. It's a strategy that takes a little bit more time. You have to follow through on it. You have to follow up with the child. If they misspelled something, if they didn't do a complete sentence, you got to have them go back and redo it. You want it to be uncomfortable. And so you have to, commit to being the facilitator of it. But long term, I can see it working. I can see it working between adults in addition to it working between children and siblings.
Well, now's certainly a good time to try it. Maybe we can change the tone of our culture, right? Like a little more love.
I need it.
Okay, let's pivot to your book and talk about some of the things in your book. So, I've often heard camp counselors and the owners of these camps talk about how, the parents really interfere with the kids' enjoyment of the summer and the running of the camp. So you kind of allude to that in your book, that the parents are a lot of challenge for the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, I want to say first that obviously I share this sentiment with all of my colleagues. Like, we are so grateful for the parent community, especially during remote learning, where you all as parents are our eyes and ears on the ground. So there's a caveat to it. But parents come to school with really high expectations of their kids. And unfortunately, teachers are put in the position of levying the negative grades because a student didn't put forth their best effort or blew off a test. We have to levy the consequences when a child makes a bad choice. And they're kids. They are going to fall down. They are going to make missteps. And I think the hardest part is helping parents to know that they're not a failure in that their child's shortcomings is not a result of them, but rather that growing up is a messy process, and we need to be consistent and work together in holding kids accountable, because that's how they're going to be better.
It's also, if you could flip it and see it as an opportunity, right, instead of, like, the consequences are so low, especially in middle school. But even in high school, like what are the consequences of a grade not coming out the way you hoped as a parent? It's like such a good time to let them see that they can do better, that they can improve from that. So here's one piece that I found interesting. I feel this way as a parent, but I didn't ever think of it from the perspective of the teacher, how nervous you are to upload grades or to have to call a parent about a problem that like you get the pit in your stomach like I do when I'm about to tell my kid no about something,
I'm getting sweaty palms just thinking about it. I gotta tell you, yeah, it's a nerve-wracking thing, and it's definitely something that's shared across educators as young as the primary grades all the way up through high school. I can't speak for college professors, but I would imagine they get a pounding heart as well.
Yeah, so I guess we can help you out by not responding in the way that you've received in the past, which is parents really having a very strong, aggressive reaction to you. On the other hand, like, what's the right balance? Like, who's your ideal parent?
My ideal parent is the one who is realistic with regards to the fact that their child is not going to be the best athlete, the best and brightest student in the class at all times. That there are going to be times where their child is going to take second, third, fourth place, and that's okay. I love the moments of collaboration that I've had with parents over the years where they have come to me and said, what can I do? How can I help my child to do better next time? Where did you see them not meet expectations on this test? Or why do you think that they plagiarized this paper? Like, how can I better hold them accountable before it gets to your desk? It's not about micromanaging your child. That is only going to push them away. They need to learn on their own, but there needs to be a checks and balances system. So at nighttime, if you find that your child's not turning in homework and they're getting a lot of missing assignments, it's less likely that it's on the part of disorganization by their teacher and more so that your child is either forgetting that they need a stronger organizational system at home, or that at nighttime, you got to go through their online learning portal and say, okay, let's see the math that you turned in. Let's see the essay that you finished. You want me to take a look at it? Like, let's make sure that you were hitting that prompt that your teacher gave you. Let's review some flashcards for science tonight so that you really knock it out of the park with your test tomorrow. I want parents to be partners with their students, not necessarily to control the outcome of their own destiny.
So that's interesting. Two things. One is that you want them to be partners with the student and partners with the teacher, right? Like there's this triangle going on. But the other is, does that tend to start looking a little bit too much like helicopter parenting, which we're trying to encourage people to back away, like doing flashcards with your kids and stuff like that?
I don't think that helping your child study for a test is helicopter parenting at all. I think going back to kind of what I had talked about at the beginning, this is a time, remote learning or not, you are giving your child life skills with regards to how do they prepare for a big presentation, a big moment in their lives. You got to practice. You have to build in the routine the night before. You can't just show up and expect to knock it out of the ballpark. That there's a framework of support that goes into it. So if you are on a Zoom call and they're taking the test and you're sitting there off camera going like, no, not that one. Or, why are you talking right now? Or, chatting with the teacher in the middle of the lesson being like, my child is confused or they don't know what's happening. That's more leading towards helicopter parenting. Lawnmower parenting is another phrase that's being used out there. You want to mow out any sort of hurdles or obstacles along the way. What I'm talking about is you are by their side. You're letting them chart their own course, but you're helping them build the skills that they need to be successful long-term.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. And you also talk about these parenting hacks during this time in particular. So it leads nicely into what is our role and how do we really, like, even physically, where should we be when our kids are doing virtual school?
You should be out of the room. You should be off camera. You should be doing your own day-to-day as their parent. What would go on normally during your own 8 to 3 should continue during remote learning. Now, I say that knowing that it's essential for you to know their schedule, to know what classes are their favorites, and that they're going to be really bought in right now because literature is their jam, or they love math, so I don't really have to worry about them straying to Netflix or YouTube during that time of their day. but also to pop in once in a while and make sure, especially during that asynchronous learning time, which is when they're working independently, they're not necessarily in front of their teacher. Pop in and, like I said, make sure that they are doing the work that they have been tasked to do. It's going to save them from having mountains of homework at night. It's also going to help them with time management. It's also going to let them know that they're still accountable, but they have that sense of independence and autonomy. I am still the author of my own academic journey. I'm going to do Zoom on my own. I'm going to do my assignments on my own, and I'm going to come to mom, dad, guardian when I need that help.
And how much of this is a conversation with the kid? Like, what's the best setup for you? Is that from top down, or is that a conversation?
With regards to expectations?
Well, even just in general, like, how many hours can you go without a break? When do you get to talk to me? Like,
Absolutely. I would say if we're talking about, students up through grade 5, definitely punctuating the morning, at lunchtime, and the afternoon with breaks is really important. They've got to move their bodies. Our middle schoolers have to move their bodies too. And so even though in my school community, we are running pretty much a normal schedule, they are in school learning from 8 until 4. Teachers are building in time for get up, go get some water. Get up, this is a bathroom break. Let's move your body. Let's do a brain break. Let's have a small group time in a breakout room where you can socialize and talk with your friends for a few minutes. So, making sure that as a parent, you are ensuring that your student is having a strong breakfast in the morning, that they are having a good lunch, that they are taking a break from screen time at lunch. That's a really important thing to prevent Zoom fatigue. It's really tempting for our kids to be like, oh, it's a break. I'm going to go on Snapchat or make a TikTok video, or I want to catch up on an episode on Netflix. No, it's really important at those times to hold them accountable to, let's go for a walk around the block. Let's have some lunch together and talk. Use that time to build communication skills and give their brains and their eyes a break.
Great. Okay, so what's your number one tip for parents when it comes to communicating well with teachers and like thinking end game strategy? What do you want from them?
I think the end game strategy, we need to work backwards, right? We start by recognizing that the teacher is seeking to do everything they can to enable your child to be a student of intellect, a student of compassion, a student of empathy, a student who's determined. And from there, if you approach it with the belief and the mindset that the teacher wants what's best for your child, that you want what's best for your child, then you're going to establish this sense of, how do we get there? We both want what's best. What do you recommend that I as parent do? Teacher should ask, what are you seeing at home? What strategies are you using at home that are working really well that I can implement at school? It should be, a give and take scenario and a conversation where both parties feel heard, both parties feel validated, and at the end, you're walking away with a game plan that's going to enable your student to be better at wherever they are having a hard time.
What do you feel hopeful about?
I feel hopeful. I think I'm in the minority here, but I feel hopeful that our students are going to come out of remote learning with such a renewed appreciation for what they have. I have heard from so many students, and I'm not, there's no hyperbole. A number of students have come to me and said, I really miss being in school. I used to not want to come. I used to get up in the morning and just be so upset that I had to go to school. I want nothing more right now than to be at school. I would give nothing more than to be able to be in class with my friends, to even be in my class and taking a test with my teacher there, kind of, getting on my case. I think that there's going to be a renewed sense of, I'm really grateful for what I have. And that gives me hope for how we're going to come out of this pandemic as a community.
Meredith Essalat, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.